you know when we're live. All right, I believe we are live, Angee. I just hit the go live button. So welcome.
Oh,
So good to see you as always. I'm really excited today to have a conversation with you about the upcoming book that we've co-authored, another book together. So excited about it. So anyway, if you don't know me, I'm April Sobral. I am a leadership expert, author, speaker, mum, good human. Most of the time, right? Spreading positivity really in the corporate world, because I work with mostly corporate retail clients after having a very long career in retail, bricks and mortar, and met this wonderful woman sitting right here on this screen, over a couple of years ago now, when I wanted to write my first book, The Positive Effect. And I'm really excited today to have this conversation and actually interview Angee, because you're always the one behind the scenes. I feel like you write all these amazing books, right? Ghostwriting, publishing, editing. And I just find out more things about you all the time, namely that you were a principal, and I didn't know that. We'll get into that. But I just think that you contribute so much to the world, and a lot of times you're just writing other people's stories. So today I wanted you to bring you on my show and really share your story, because this book would not have happened if it was not for you. So I'm going to start off by introduce yourself, what you do, who you are, and then I want you to share your story of how you got into where you are now in terms of publishing and authoring amazing books for people.
cool. Well, I am Angee Costa. I am the CEO of 846 Publishing and One Price Edit, and soon One Price Marketing, soon to come. And I love books. I've always loved books. I grew up very, very poor in a very economically disadvantaged neighborhood. And the way I escaped that neighborhood was to climb out on the roof of our house. My mother never found out about this until I was an adult, but I would run to the library, I'd grab a stack of books, and I'd climb out onto the roof of our house. And I would literally sit there kind of surveying the entire city and reading my books. And those books just took me everywhere. Had a really difficult school history. It just didn't click. It wasn't working for me. It was very, very tough to succeed in school. And so, years passed, and thankfully I met someone who changed my life. It was a teacher. Her name is Louise Amick. If you're out there, Miss Amick, I love you with all of my heart. She changed my world. She taught me that I could learn and taught me how to learn. She invested in me, and she had empathy for what I was going through. And she taught me that I did have a brain. It was in there. It just needed to be massaged and brought to life. And because of her, I decided to become a teacher myself, went to college, graduated with a degree in math and English education. I taught for a while, left and went off to corporate America, and then decided to start my own business. And that's where I met this amazing woman here to my left, just absolutely incredible person. And when I met April, it was because she was writing a book, the book that started it all, The Positive Effect, which was designed toward the retail industry. But I want to tell you, I can't think of another time. I don't think it's ever happened before then or since, where a client would come to me, ask me to edit their book, and the book itself just wouldn't leave me. That book wouldn't leave me. It was over a year. I was still soaked in all of the amazing concepts that were taught in that book, and it was having an impact in my life. And I just decided to call April and just reach out to her again and say, this book is incredible. We need to think about what else we can do. And that sort of started the chain.
Yeah. God, so many things to unpack there. Right. How did you get into writing though? Like, I want to go back a minute and how you got into writing, because people always ask me how I got into writing. So yes, you love books and then you're a teacher and then you went off to do your own thing, but really what caused that? And before you answer that question though, I am going to say this, because if you don't get to the end of this video, I'm going to tell you how to get hold of us now. So if you want to find out more about this book, go to aprilsobral.com, hit the Positive Effect books. And you'll be able to find information about all the books that are coming out in the series, but particularly this is very important because it's the first one of the series, well, the second book, but the first one of the series for educators. So this book is specifically for educators using the principles of the first book that we're going to get into and talk about. So that's where you can find us. And you can find us on all social medias, but that's where you'll find all the information for this book. So how did you get into writing though and publishing? Like, how did that happen?
It was really by mistake, I guess it would be the right way to say that. I had an idea for a book, and I just started like writing it, thinking that I was writing it for my kids. I just wanted to write something for my children. I have four kids. They're all senior citizens now, but they were little kids then. And I just wanted to write something that was clean and wholesome, but still had the punch, because sometimes it's hard to get both. I didn't want a lot of sex or a lot of violence, but I wanted it to be engaging enough to hold their attention. Two of them were teenagers and the other two were like coming up on teenage years. So I wrote that book for my kids and they said, Mom, this is really good. You should like make this available to other people. This is a great story. And I knew nothing, absolutely nothing about publishing, how to really write a good story, how to develop characters, anything like that. And so what I did was I joined a writing group, and that group met every week, and we shared, our stories. We would read chapters to each other, and I got such great feedback. But here's what happened. I was giving good feedback, and I didn't even know it. Like, people would come up to me after the group and say, oh my God, what you said, it totally changed my book. Like, I get, like, this is great. Well, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this. And then one of the women in the group asked me if I would edit her book. And I'm like, I did have a degree in English, so I guess I could edit for grammar and punctuation, but to edit it, like in terms of content, I don't know. I said, I'll do it, but I'm not going to charge you anything for it because I have no experience in this. It was such a rewarding experience, and I'm so glad she asked me, because the other people in the group started asking me, and then I started doing it for even more people outside of the group, and it just grew and grew and grew and grew. And then finally, one of my clients who I edited for asked me to ghostwrite his book. He had a series of books he wanted to do, 12 books, and he wanted me to ghostwrite the first one. And I did the same thing. I said, I'm not charging you anything, I'll just do it. And it unlocked the realization that I actually loved writing and could write.
That's amazing. I mean, the power of somebody asking you one thing and then you saying yes to it and
Yes.
going for it, and just then look what's happened, right? That's just so, and I think that's a big lesson for all of us. It's like so many people have these ideas that they want to write a book and then they go, well, I'm not an author. And I love that question that you always say that your daughter asks you, like, Mom, when do you say that you're an author? Right? Like, because I think it took me a long time to recognize myself as an author, because I don't think of myself like that.
Yeah. And by the way, folks, she had 2 books published at that time when she finally went, oh, wait a minute, I'm an author. It really is a very powerful thing to acknowledge that you are who you say you are, right? And if you are able to say who you are, you can start to move in that new understanding of yourself. But for so long, we say the wrong thing about ourselves. I don't want to go get into that whole thing because that's our first book. But I'm just saying, like, there are some people out there who need to start saying, and because this is a book for educators, I just believe that as a teacher, you have to believe that you could have the next, world leader. You could have the next, Elon Musk or whomever, next Einstein, sitting in your classroom, and you are the difference maker. You are the person who's going to unlock that, just like Mrs. Amy did for me. She was the key. Without her, I would not be sitting here today.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, because the first book was written for leaders, in the retail industry. And the link that I see that I absolutely love about this book for educators is when I think about leaders in the retail industry, well, really leaders in any industry, because now the positive effect trains leaders in tech, it trains leaders in consulting, it trains banking, it trains advertising. Actually, it trains everybody, people that read it that are not just in retail. And this is what's led to this series, right? Is that those principles were applied to me. Like I literally had people in my career that accepted me for who I was, that made me feel valued, heard, didn't judge me on past mistakes that I had made. So that's the first pillar. You have to be able to do that to connect with people. And the second one, like I was always taught by my mother, because she was an American hippie, right, from California, to think positively, and what you think about you will create more of. And you know, what you do, where you spend your time really matters, because that's what you're manifesting all the time. And then the last piece is just to be a teacher and a coach. And mentor people. And I had those leaders in my career. So when I started thinking about putting my leadership methodology, how to be, really not what to do. Now we teach what to do in workshops because that's important, but how to be. It was based on the experiences I had had with people. And then that's how that shaped my leadership, and then allowed me to shape teams. And a lot of the people in those teams in retail are students. They're first-time job seekers that literally find their way into retail because it's the most highly part-time, like hospitality job that you can get when you're in school to kind of pay your way. And so the link between like the positive effect for retail leaders and the positive effect for educators is so exciting to me, because I feel like we're going back to the source now, and we're actually giving this framework that has created the most amazing teams and cultures that I was fortunate to be a part of, witness people do that and then emulate and actually practice it myself and now teach it. But to give that to teachers is so exciting to me, Angee, because we literally take their students and put them into retail and teach them, and hopefully give them some people skills that will confidence, which will get them on their way to their careers wherever they're going, based on these three principles, if we show up this way. So to give this gift to teachers, and the fact that you wanted to bring this to a bigger audience, I'm just so grateful for, because they are really powerful steps. They're really powerful methodologies of how they can be applied. So let's get into the book a little bit. So when you think about these principles, accept, create, teach, like how you act really matters. What stands out for these principles, and why do you think they're so applicable to a wider audience, but specifically educators, because this is the book that's coming out?
Well, there's really a crisis in education. I mean, anyone who's involved in the school system knows that there's a problem, even if you happen to be one of the fortunate ones who's in a really great school where there is positivity and where there's collaboration and where students are achieving. You still know of other teachers and scores of students who are struggling in your school district. I was a teacher. I taught math, and I loved it, but my subject was the one no child was excited about, or very few were excited about math. And I needed to connect with them in a way that made them trust me. And I needed to connect with them in a way that let me guide them into, understanding mathematical concepts, right? So, kids would come in, very withdrawn and very, hesitant and really doubting themselves, doubting their own ability to learn math. They would say, I don't have a head for math, or I'm not smart, or whatever. And you'd have to get past that in order to be able to teach them. And that's what teachers today are struggling with. In addition to all of the crap that teachers have to deal with, let's just be honest, they're dealing with all kinds of bureaucracies. They're dealing with negative environments in school buildings. I mean, I've heard some of the really most heart-wrenching things from teachers about how much they love what they do but hate their job. They want to teach, love to teach, but it has become so difficult to do what they've always longed to do. And I completely relate because I escaped. Like I abandoned my role as a teacher to go to the corporate world thinking it's just too tough. It's just too difficult. I wish I had a book like this that put this ACT system in front of me and gave me that strength and confidence to first connect with these students. If you can connect with the student, which I've later learned now because I do occasionally go back into the education system, I tutor, I helped to run a learning hub during the pandemic, which I talk a little bit about in the book. So I do like answer the call to be a teacher. And so when you go back into these situations now, I can go back understanding that I have to connect with them first. Once you connect with them, everything else is easy. Everything else is easy. Now you can create and you can teach. But first you have to accept them for who they are. You have to understand where they've come from, what they're dealing with. For some of them, it's absolutely traumatic what they have to go through just to make it from their house to the school. And I'm not just talking about kids in urban centers or underprivileged areas. I'm talking even about kids who are coming from wealthy families. They're facing challenges you and I never had to deal with as kids. And so that's why I think the ACT system applies here in education, just like it applied in the corporate world, because it was the same problem, right? Negative environments, oppressive environments, lack of collaboration, lack of creativity, frustration, all of that weighs down the corporate space, just like it weighs down the educational space.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest mistakes we make, and this is what I've learned over all the years of leading people and teaching leadership for the last 5 years and building a professional development company and working with all different organizations, not just in retail now, it literally we make assumptions that when we put people through the technical side of let's say, the skill that they need to learn, right? We make assumptions that people know this stuff. I remember when I first started writing this book and started, teaching it, I was like, well, no, people know this stuff, right? Like, why, how am I going to add value to them? Like, they know this stuff. But you said that book changed your life. You're like, no, if I had this book before, I need to get this to more people, it's going to change my life. So a lot of times as principals or educators, we make assumptions that people know this stuff. And they really don't. This is the thing. Like, you need to teach people how to remove judgment. You need to teach them how, and give them permission to value. Like, inside, inherently, we know it, but it's like we get trained in a specific way, and then we think we have to act a certain way. And then we spend the rest of our life kind of disassembling that and going, no, it's just about being authentic and connecting. And one thing that I love about what Shannon shares, because Shannon is just like, I mean, what a bright light, right? And like finding her, and I'll bring her on next week. We'll do a follow-up series with her and her story, but finding her and getting her engaged in this. Like, she is the director of the Urban Assembly of Schools in New York. She's done some amazing work in the school system. But like, yeah, her thing of like, when she came out of teaching college and her thinking, what kind of teacher do I need to be? And then she went through all the movies that she had seen, or all the TV shows that she had seen, or all the, the personas of like, well, I get to be this kind of teacher. I want to be the fun teacher. I want to be the tough teacher. And she's like, one of the things that she sees all the time when she's in the classroom coaching now, teachers, is that like people go through the technical piece of it. Like, yeah, I know I've got to do lesson plans and I know this is my curriculum, I have to teach it. But then it's like, what kind of teacher do I get to be versus what I have to do, right? And she said that's where the struggle is, because you think you have to assume a certain persona to literally get these kids to listen to you. But she spends a lot of time coaching around that. And this book can really help that, don't you think?
Oh, I absolutely believe that's true. I love the story she tells in the very beginning of the book. You guys will read her talk about walking into a classroom for the first time. She had on her power suit and, she's in New York. She's like, this is great. I've made it. I've got this wonderful position. And she goes in to teach those kids. And it was absolute, like a wall, like a steel wall between her and her students. And I love that she says, that she needed to be the student. She came in thinking they were students and she was the teacher. No, people do teach you how to teach them. Students will teach you how to teach them if you'll just take a minute and listen and allow them to teach you. And so she role reversed, she checked her ego and really humbled herself and let those students teach her what the world was truly like, because they're living in a world we don't even understand. Things have changed so much from the time I was in school till now, when my teenagers are in school, that I can't even relate to it sometimes. It's so stressful for them. And so they need us to be that light. They need us to be that connection point. And once they love you and they trust you and they know you care about them, they'll learn anything you throw at them. You can throw anything at them. Physics, you could throw, it doesn't matter. They will learn it. Then you think about math, you've got to learn algebra and geometry and in some cases pre-calculus. Kids need to know that they can fail and you will still embrace them. They need to feel free, feel at ease to try. It needs to be a safe space for them. All of that is done in the accept part of the ACT system. That's where you build that foundation. And I believe if we can get this message out, there's no limit to how many people we can touch with this, and imagine the lives of the students that would be changed.
100%. What's a story that you maybe struggled to put in there, or had, very emotional to put in there, but you put it in there because you felt like it was really purposeful? Because I know, I've not been an educator. I've trained a lot of young people in retail. My contribution is really the methodology of how this can help beyond just retail. And, I share my story of my high school experience, which wasn't wonderful. When I read some of yours and Shannon's stories, I had a hard time getting through it. I was getting emotional. Like, it was literally evoking emotions in me. So is there any part of the book or the story that you can kind of share as a snippet that you had a hard time writing, or you just really felt like it had to be in there?
Yeah, I decided to be very vulnerable, and I do share some of my personal educational history, which is embarrassing to think about what I went through as a student. But I was a student, right? I was helpless. I didn't have the power to change my situation. I needed somebody to rescue me. But I think the story I struggled the most to share, or at least to write, because I still get emotional about it, is The Little Girl Under the Table. That story, oh my goodness gracious. I just want everyone to know that there are children out there who are experiencing these kinds of things. And then we bring them into a classroom and expect them to learn after the things they've seen and the things they've heard and the fear that they've experienced, the lack of care that they receive on a daily basis. Which also reminds me of a story Shannon shared, and I'm sure she'll do her own interview, so I won't steal her thunder, but she talks about how we treat children like they're adults. Why were you late to school? Well, most kids don't drive in elementary and middle school. As far as I know, most of them don't drive. They need a caring parent to bring them, make sure that they're, showered and well fed and, had a good night's sleep the night before. And so many of our kids come to us without that. They come to us without that. And we have to find a way to get past that barrier. So, yeah, I think The Little Girl Under the Table is such a heart-wrenching story that I hope people will read and internalize and understand that timidity, that helplessness, the fear, and all of that. And then to be ripped out of that environment and dropped into a classroom, and then we wonder why they can't read and they can't do math. It's because they've been broken and they need to be accepted. They need that ACT system working around them. They need that environment to be nothing but positivity all the time.
Yeah. It's like that story. That makes me well up and get emotional every time, because, and I like what you said about internalizing it, because if we don't, there's a danger that you could just read it and right now not have that empathy and that connection. And so I think if we could all find more empathy in us, especially when we're in positions of power. You know, one of the things I talk about all the time to retail leaders or any leader right now is like, you have a title, and that title is a position of power, and you need to use it in a positive way, like not in a negative way. And I think the basic thing of like, you know, why are you late at school? When you don't know what that kid's gone through. And I think those perspectives from Shannon, because she's in the education system and she walks into classrooms and she sees teachers having those responses, man, it really opened my eyes. I was like, yes. Wow. And then they come a lot of them into our environment, and they're hit over the head the same way with a manager that maybe doesn't show empathy and doesn't listen and just has their own agenda. And I think sometimes if we can just get our own agenda out of the way, like you said, and be the student, God, what a difference we could make in the world, you know, together.
And we have to. I mean, we can't do education the way we've done it for the past 150 years. We can't. The old model was perfect for school back then, you know, for life back then. It worked. But we are in a highly, highly technical society right now. Technology is moving so fast. I don't care if you're in it. You and I are in it every day in the work that we do. And we're still having to run double time to keep up. It's like every day there's a new app, or there's a new platform, or there's a new system for doing things. And we are asking kids to go into that now. When they graduate from college, we're asking them to be prepared to step into this very, very highly technical world. And so we have to prepare them correctly. We can't use the old model. It just doesn't work. It's not that there was anything wrong with it then, but it doesn't fit the world we're living in today. We have to teach kids to be learners, because you must be a learner to survive in this society. It's not, we don't need to just teach them skills. That skill you're teaching them today won't exist 10 years from now when they graduate. True. It'll be gone. So you need to teach them to be learners, to be thinkers, to be able to take things apart, put things together, innovate. That's what kids need to learn today. And that's a hard adjustment for me, because I was a teacher in the old system, right? Yeah. I didn't have this amazing book back then. And so that's hard for me, even as a parent, because my kids have to do things in ways that are foreign to me. So we need to empower teachers to do this work and make their job, again, the best job in the world, the job they longed for when they were in college and studying and working hard. They wanted to be teachers. That first year teacher is so full of fire and excitement and energy and optimism. And then we crush the teacher over years and years and years of nonsense and bureaucracy and politics and other things that have nothing to do with the classroom. So I believe this is a revolution. I believe this is the beginning of a true revolution in the education industry.
I'm excited. We're going to start wrapping up in just a minute, but if you find this in your feed, please share it, tag somebody you know that's a teacher. The book launches December 1st officially. There is a registration on the website right now where you can put in your information. We'll get in touch with you. Our goal is to really reach a million school teachers and beyond. What you can find on that webpage is 2 resources. So one of them is a letter for you to take to your administrator of your school and say, hey, can you buy this book for all the teachers in the school? Like, this is a letter, we're giving it to you so that you have the verbiage and telling them what it is, number 1. Number 2, there's another letter on there. These are downloadable tools that you can take to your organization. If you have a corporate social responsibility team or a HR team or a part of your organization where you do donations and get involved in community work, there's a letter for you to take it to your organization. So I'm going to call on all my retail network to print off that letter and take it to their organization and get their organization to buy in bulk and donate to their employees' schools. What a great way to pass on the gift of education to your teachers, and give them some skill development, as well as get your employees engaged. And also with this book launch, there's going to be some giveaways. Like we have, actually I saw Ron on the live earlier. I don't know if he's still on, but watching. We created a course for how to ace your first retail job for young people in the middle of the pandemic, with some great retail leaders that I know. And so we're going to be giving away that course as well from the Retail U program for students. So if you're a retailer and you buy all these books, you'll be also donating a course to all the students, which means, guess what? It's going to help you when you go to hire those students because they're going to be educated. We took 150 kids through that program and it was really well received. Some of them still work in retail today. They're getting promoted into assistant manager roles. And we all know that retail's struggling when it comes to finding employees. So this is your pour in and pay back. And when there'll be t-shirts and things where we'll be launching some of the stuff to like give back to the teachers. But that's where you can find us, aprilsobral.com. Just hit the Positive Effect Books tab and you'll see all the information on there. And sign up now. Get your name in there now. You know, get those letters out there now. You don't have to wait till December 1st, right, to get this launched. We want to get as many people behind it as possible. But before we wrap up, Angee, is there anything else that you want anybody to know? We've got a couple minutes.
I just want to say that, you know, so many of us as adults, parents, what have you, complain about the education system. We complain about the state of things for our children. This is an opportunity to actually do something about it and do something that is meaningful, tangible, and effective. Just share this with everyone that you know. Let them know, about the positive effect for educators and the opportunity for their companies to donate books. If you want to donate books, that's great too. Let's get this book in the hands of teachers so they can, again, feel joy when they come into their classrooms. And I'll end with this one story, and I'll never forget it. My kids were in school, and it was the last day of school, and I was in the pickup line, and reached the spot where my kids were. They jumped in the car, windows were down, it was summer, windows were down, and as I was driving away, I heard my daughter's teacher cheering that she didn't have to see her students anymore that year. And I thought, that's not why she became a teacher, to be happy that the school year is over and you don't have to see them again. That's not what she wanted. What she wanted was to actually cheer that she had poured into their lives for an entire school year and that she had watched them grow. And she had that feeling of accomplishment and joy. That's what we want to restore to teachers. And that's why we wrote The Positive Effect for Educators.
I love that. Yeah, fantastic. It's so important. All right, Angee Costa. Well, I'm excited to get this book out there. Thank you so much for your time today. And thank you so much for your contribution and actually bringing this to life. This wouldn't have happened if you hadn't picked up the phone and called me that day. So
I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I did.
Yeah. Okay, so you know where to find us. Share this post, send it to somebody that knows teachers. I know so many people that engage with teachers and schools on a daily basis. So we're counting on all of you to help us get this out there. And we'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Everyone.